Okay, so now we are into block 4. One fortunate thing about block 4 is half of it is repetition of the earlier things. Okay, so that means we are going to actually, we are not having a lot of things to actually learn. That is what it is all about. So first thing, okay, first we are into the first chapter. So first chapter is about the introduction of OD and what is OD interventions. So basically it is combination of OD and OD interventions is what is learned in this particular unit. Okay, so it starts with meaning of OD, definition of OD, which we have already learned during block 1 actually. So there is something called as the characteristics of OD as well, which we went through during block 1. It's a similar thing which is repeated in a different way in this particular first part. Okay, so so it's something that is a repetition here from the OD point of view. Then it goes into definition and concepts of OD interventions. Okay, so once it actually defines OD intervention, it talks about how OD is classified and what are the various families within OD. So let's start with first OD's definition, which we already went through. So I'll take it in a much greater pace. It's a planned activity which is done by an organization to improve its effectiveness, right? And this is something based on the behavioral science. Okay, so that is exactly what is the OD is. So it is impacting the entire organization. It is a long, so what are the characteristics of OD? It is a long range effort, it is broadband, so it gives a very big picture, it is a dynamic process, it's a systems view where we are talking about open system, adaptive, etc. It is based on the research, goal settings, planning, normative re-educative strategy. Basically this could actually change the entire organizational culture, so those kind of things. Okay, so those are the characteristics of OD. So one confusing part which I was not clear, hence I highlighted here again. There is actually a characteristic of OD which is covered in block 1 unit 2. So this also has got characteristics of OD. Okay, but nevertheless points aren't very different. It is actually one and the same, but I just wanted to bring those points as well here. But the underlying points which are covered here are from block 1 unit 2. So basically OD as an education strategy, right? So because it is actually, it's mainly re-educating the people. So if you see normative re-educative strategies covering the similar point, right? It is based on the practitioners, focus on the real problems, immediate and existing problems. It is a dynamic process. Dynamic process is not open and adaptive system concepts, which is also covered above. Dynamic process is also covered above. So nevertheless, the points are similar, but it is actually given twice. So one here, one there, kind of a thing. Okay. So this is about characteristic of OD. So now going into process. So it's actually something. So this is again, which was actually covered in that particular unit, but again, the process really comes into picture here as well. So it is something which is driven by the top management, and this is something that is going to change the entire culture and habits to create that particular, new culture, whatever that is required for an organization to be more effective. Okay, so so basically it mainly aims up at the long term, but it also does have short term day-to-day activities or problems that would be solved as well. So this is about process of OD. But what I feel is when it comes to OD definition or characteristic or the process, the other things more than this unit, block 1 is supposed to be the parent unit. That is the one which is mainly concentrated on OD. This might be actually giving the picture again before starting the interventions. But I feel the content for that particular question should mainly belong to the other block rather than here. Okay, so next is what are the role? What is the role of a consultant? This was also there in the above unit. Okay, so I'm skipping this particular part as well. Okay, and now we are going into important part of this particular unit, which is concept of intervention. Okay, so what is an intervention? We briefly talked about what is intervention in the other unit. So intervention is nothing but a activity that you do to actually correct or fix certain issue that you identify in the organization, right? So there is a goal, and in order to meet that particular goal, you are actually trying to structure an activity that is going to actually help you to take you towards that goal. So that is an intervention. So for example, let's say if there are performance problems that you identified, people are not performing well, so you will actually put an intervention which could actually help you to identify where the performance problem is, how to fix that particular performance, etc., etc. Similarly, if you think the structure of your organization is not good, then there is a different intervention which is going to fix your structure. So depending upon whatever the goal is, the type of intervention that you are going to do is going to change. But nevertheless, it is a structured activity that is done to actually meet your organizational goal. Okay, so it is to improvise your entire organization. So there are different interventions as far as the interventions are concerned. Okay, mainly there is an interventions which are, so if I classify the interventions based on the target, right? It could be there might be interventions which are targeting an individual. Basically, you want to uplift skills of a particular individual. You might really be targeting to address cultural aspects of it or whatever, right? So this is individual related interventions. There are list of interventions which you can target an individual. Similarly, there are list of interventions where you can target group, and there are list of interventions where you can target organization. For example, you correcting the structure of an organization is an intervention which is targeting organization. It is not targeting a group, right? So team building activity is a group kind of an intervention. A skill uplift is kind of a individual related intervention. So these three types of interventions are possible: individual, group, and organization. Okay, and what makes an intervention effective? So there are three major criteria when it comes to an intervention to define it as a success. One, how much it is going to cover within the organization, right? The extent it fits. So if I take an intervention which is affecting my majority of my organization, the effectiveness of it is going to be more, right? At the degree to which it is based on casual knowledge of intended outcomes. Okay, so the outcome that it is going to actually deliver, and what is the kind of uh, casual knowledge, basically what kind of uh, awareness that you have on their intended outcomes. See, first forget about how much of outcome that it finally generates. This point is more about how much you think that it is supposed to deliver. Okay, so basically you are targeting this to improve, let's say, skill. So your target is, your intended outcome is, this is going to improve the skills of the organization, right? So that is the targeted outcome that you did do. But in the end, it might not improve the skills. That is a different case. Okay, so but the importance or the extent to which this effect is intention could be effective is based on this, your knowledge of intended outcome, and the extent to which it transfers change management competence to the organizational members. Okay, so basically It is also about how exactly this entire intervention can be managed, the competence at which this particular thing, change management, could be done. Okay, is also another criteria to make this particular intervention effective. One, extent to which it fits in the organization. Two, what are the intended outcomes for it. Three, what is the kind of change management competence that it is actually having. Okay, so that is these are the 3 points which are going to actually dictate how effective would be the intervention. Okay, so now it is also, these are the beginning major criteria, right? So there are other, basically if you go into the organizational related aspects, readiness for change, basically your effectiveness of your intervention would also depend on how ready your organization is to take this change, and also capability of taking this particular change. Whether your organization is ready or not, everybody is informed about the change, whether your organization is capable or not, right? And what is your current organization's culture? What is the context that they have as an organization? Okay, and what is the capability of change agent? If you remember, yesterday we talked about who is change agent. This is the important stakeholder who is driving the change. What is his capability? And contingencies related to the target of change. So contingencies are the alternatives related to the target. So in case if something wrong, what are the things that you would have in hand to actually fix it? So these are all the other factors that would actually come into picture. Okay, so from the questions point of view, okay, so definition of intervention is going to be an important one. Okay, and what is an effective intervention is going to be an important question for 3 marks. Okay, and characteristics of OD intervention is going to be the other question that is going to be important. Okay, so now we are actually going into the next aspect, which is organizational issues. So basically, what kind of issues that an organization would have while implementing, I mean, so that the need for intervention is there, right? I mean, generally interventions are there to fix the issues. What kind of needs? First, strategic issue. Okay, so there is an issue with the way the organization is implementing a strategy. Two, technology and structural issues. And there are human resource issues. And there is a human process issues. Okay, so there is a very small difference between human resources issues and human process issues. Right, so basically human resource issues are mainly talking about what are the issues related to the particular human, right? I mean, it could be skills. So how exactly skill would be affecting, that is human resource issue. Okay, and in the process issue, for example, how well you are engaging them, what is the managerial relationship between a manager and subordinate relationship. So those things are human process related issues. Okay, so that's about the issues, type of issues that could come. So there are further classifications that are going to come as far as OB intervention is concerned. So in that, these categories are further explained. These issues are further decomposed, and categories of interventions and other things are talked about. So there is like more explanation that would actually come down the line on these aspects. So it is only a very slight introduction is what I could say here. Okay, so now coming to a point where rules of implementation. Okay, so when you are actually implementing a process or an intervention, what are the rules? First rule, maximize diagnostic data. So what it means, collect more and more data so that you can actually analyze more on how to make decisions, and from there you will get a better decision. So you need to get as much of data as you want, as as you can. Second, maximize effectiveness. Okay, so basically you need to make sure that whatever that you are doing is as effective as possible. I think everybody tries to do that, but just a special focus that you need to give, and it needs to be very efficient. Maximize your efficiency, maximize speed, maximize relevance, minimize psychology and organizational strain. So these are the 6 rules, right? I think these rules are self-evident because that is what we would want to actually do in any case, right? We want to gather as much of data so that we get a better decision and we make a very effective change as well, right? So and very efficient with a greater speed. We want to do it as soon as possible, and we want to do something with relevance so that everybody can relate how relevant it is to them, right? And we don't want to make people cry about it. So we want to minimize the psychological and organizational strain. So that is about rules of implementation. Now we are going into nature and classification of organizational development intervention. So basically, this is where we are going to talk briefly about nature of an intervention and what sort of classifications that are there. Okay, it's actually mainly a classification, less of a nature. I think nature encompasses both the definition and all the aspects, right? So as I said before, interventions could be at various places. It can do various sort of things. It all depends on what kind of issues that are coming, right? So it could be, we briefly covered about the issues on the top, interventions that the issues from the organization point of view, which interventions really go through. So it is very similar to whatever that we talked about in the above. One, the interventions could be based on the human processes. Okay, so the things like T group, process consultation, third party intervention, team building, okay, organizational confrontation meetings. So these are all types of human process related interventions. So T group is nothing but you bring up a set of individuals, 15 to 20 individuals together, train them on the sensitivity aspect. Basically, it is a sensitivity training, which you do. And in that, what you do is you make them sit. So there is a definition that is going to come down the line. I'm just preempting the definition, but it is there in the next chapter. So you bring all those 15, 20 individuals and make them talk in that particular training, and let them understand what each individual is all about. So in the end of the training, people in that particular group not only understand themselves, also understand various other people who are there as part of the particular training. So they kind of understand each and every individual there. So that is the part of it. So it is like a sensitivity training where you are sensitizing people on various cultural backgrounds, various psychological backgrounds, or the other stuff. So you just accumulate people and let them gel together, and you target understanding each other. That is what T group. Okay, process consultation, we actually talked about. Third party intervention, you're bringing some other guy and then making sure that things are resolved within the team. So all these things, whatever the examples of these interventions that we talked about, are all related to human processes. Okay, and the second type of intervention is techno-structural. So if you remember, we talked about socio-technical structures, job design, and those kind of things. All those things would come under techno-structural. You are actually trying to change the structure of an organization here, okay, and trying to design the way that you actually assign work, or even where your units are or structure of your organization is, those kind of interventions would all come under techno-structural interventions. Next is human resource management, right? So this is aiming at how you are going to set a goal, how you are going to measure the performance, how you are going to reward an individual. Okay, so these are all under human resource management, the interventions under it. The last category or the last classification of OD here is interventions based on causal mechanisms. Okay, so there are n number of what do you say the casual things which would be there within the organization, right? We are going to talk about those types, so you will understand what those particular casual mechanism means. Okay, so it is like a catch-all. First, okay, discrepancy intervention. So what it means, let's say you found that there are two reports that are given by two units, okay, and both seems to be not matching. One said that this activity is very good, the other said that this is not good. Okay, now you are going to do an intervention and see why they are contradicting, right? So that is what is discrepancy intervention. Second, theory intervention. Okay, so you have certain things as behavioral science. According to theory, somebody will have to do it in this way, but you found it the other way. Okay, so that is where you do a theory intervention. Okay, it is based on whatever the theoretical knowledge, and this is basically on the behavioral science. The third is procedural intervention. Okay, it is about you are just checking whatever procedure that you are doing, is it right or not. Fourth is relationship intervention. I think name itself is evident here. Any relationship problems. Fifth, experimentation intervention. Okay, so basically it is about doing the POC. You are doing proof of concept before doing it. You have two methods. You are just trying to check which one is the best by doing a POC, proof of concept. Six, dilemma intervention. Okay, so this is like there is a dilemma that is actually going to come, right? So now you are trying to actually examine possible choices that you have to either, I mean, cover that particular dilemma or handle that particular dilemma well before it actually comes. So, so that is what is the dilemma intervention. Seventh, perspective intervention. So it's like there is a context, there is a future objective. So, so it is to actually assess whether whatever the thing that you had in your mind that this is what is going to be the outcome, you are just checking whether whatever that the things which are there in the plan are still relevant or not. So that is perspective intervention. Okay, based on your history, whatever that you had, so you are just checking in the current context and making sure that it is still your perspective is right. The next is organizational structural intervention. Okay, so this is also evident. So here you are talking about organizational structure. Ninth is cultural intervention. So this is also clear, focused on the cultural aspects. These are all nine casual mechanisms or nine casual interventions apart from human process, techno-structural, and human resource management. Okay, so there are total 4 categories: human process, techno-structural, human resource management, and casual mechanisms. Under casual mechanisms, we went through 9 such interventions. Okay, so and what are the major families of intervention activities, right? So intervention could be of diagnostic nature. Okay, it could be related to a team building. It could be intergroup activities. It is something like a survey feedback activity, training related activity, structural related activity, process consultation related activity, third party peacemaking. Somebody is coming in between and then making sure that everything is going well. Third party peacemaking activity, strategic management activity. This is to set your strategy, right? Sensitivity training. We talked about T group. So T group is one of those sensitivity training. Okay, and organizational transformation activity. So transforming the entire. So these are the set of activities intervention would do. So this is not a classification of intervention. These are classification of activities that are done as part of those interventions. Okay. So this is unit 1 and so now we are going into unit 2. Okay, so let's go to unit 2. Okay, so in this unit, we kind of again deep diving into what are the intervention activities, what kind of interventions, what are the issues that are there, right? And how to design a particular intervention. This is what is this particular unit is all about. So first, so there are two kinds of questions that are asked in this. One is steps of designing an intervention, how to design an intervention. That is one. Two, what are the factors that would impact the success of an OD intervention? So in order to make an OD intervention successful, what are the factors? So these are the two important questions that were asked. Okay. So as a base, before going into those particular questions, what so basically first thing is about how you are going to the first part of this particular unit talks about how exactly you're going to select an intervention. Okay, so there are two aspects as far as the selection of intervention is concerned. Okay, one, what is the framework that you are actually trying to select, right? What is the framework that you are going to use to select the intervention activity? Two, what could be the issues or the factors that you need to consider while you are actually selecting this particular intervention activity. So under these issues, we are going to talk the factors which are going to impact the success of OD. Okay, so the parent topic that we are going to talk about is how to select an OD, I mean, activity, what needs to be done, right? And then in that we are going to talk about, okay, in order to actually do before, in order to know what is to be selected, I need to know what are the factors which are going to contribute to the success of OD intervention. Okay, so as far as the frameworks are concerned, there are two types of frameworks that OD intervention activities does have. Okay, one is process model and the other is content model. This is very, very similar to, if you remember, our motivations, where we have process theories, where we have content theories, right? So process model, what it does, they actually communicate do and don'ts or blueprint of interventions ranging from early stage of diagnosis to the last, saying that do this intervention in case of this, do don't do this intervention in case of this, kind of a thing. So there is a kind of framework which does have list of interventions that you need to do at what place, what to do, what not to do. So this is the process model. So list of so basically the activities at each stage, right from diagnosis to the last end, evaluating the end result. You have various activities which it talks about. What is do's and don'ts? That kind of a framework is called as a process model. Okay. The second one is content model. Okay, so it talks about this puts like what activities to be done for what job. It is related to process, do this intervention. This is related to organization structure, do this. This is related to job, do this. So first process model talks about stages and then keeps do's and don'ts. In case of content model, it talks about elements and then lists the activities. Okay, so that is the difference between process model and content model. Okay, so this is a very broad framework that we are talking about as far as choosing the OD intervention activity. Okay, so now we are going into the issues and factors that would impact the success of OD intervention. So the above, the thing that we talked as process model and content model never came in the exam, but you can probably remember, they might ask a 3 mark question. And one more point which is there in this particular section is there is a concept called as an evidence-based framework. Okay, so basically this is other than process model and content model. The other framework that people use is evidence-based framework, which is gaining a popularity, where organizations do develop what activities to be done, what activities not to be done based on experiential knowledge, based on evidences which are actually available already, which were done by other organizations or this organization or the other units or whatever it is. Right. So this is called as an evidence-based framework. So you have an evidence that this works. There is an evidence that this doesn't work, kind of a thing. So that is what is the another framework which you could actually say: process model, content model, and evidence-based framework, which are very broad frameworks in terms of choosing what is the OD activity that needs to be done. So now we are going into the factors that impact the success of OD interventions. Okay, factors related to the change. So basically, if I talk about broad factors, what could impact an OD intervention success is first is the factors related to situation. Right, in what situation this OD is being done. So if the situation is worst, if I am if I am trying to actually deal with something which is a very big cultural problem, very difficult to change, then the success factor is going to be not very high, right? Depending on the situation, my success would actually be there. So one factors associated with the situation. Second broad category is factors associated with the target of the change. Whom am I changing? Am I changing one single individual, or I am trying to change the entire culture of the organization, or just I am trying to actually change a small unit or a group, right? Depending on the target, whom I am actually aiming at, and what kind of issue that I am targeting. Okay, am I first of all targeting culture, or am I targeting people? Right, whom I am targeting, even and what I am targeting, right? Both is targets that I am actually having in my mind. So two broad factors: one, situation; two, target. Under situation, now we have four different classes. One, how my so if I assess the situation, what are the various situational things that are there? Whether my organization is ready for the change, whether they have capability to change, whether there is a cultural context which is set to change, whether my change agent is capable or not. Okay, so now remember, in last unit as well, we talked about same thing, but unfortunately in unit 1 it is not organized well to explain this particular thing, but ultimately it is talking about same the factors which were affecting the success of OD intervention. Okay, so this is the factors which are related to the change situation. So now the second thing, we are going into target group. Target group, as I said, there are two things that are there when you are talking about target group, right? First, what is the kind of issue that you are targeting? Is it a strategic issue? Is it a technology and structural issue? Is it a human resource issue? Is it a processor issue? Okay, so remember these four are repeated multiple ways. These pointers are going to be helpful because for all the questions, these are the 4 pointers that are there. So organizational issues are of 4 types: strategic issue, technology or structural issue, human resource issue, human process related issue. And the second aspect of this particular target of change is whom I am actually targeting. Am I targeting a particular individual or a group or entire organization? Am I targeting a leader or a manager or which unit and whom? Right. So who is what is the organizational levels? Okay, so there are different levels. Where I am targeting, to whom I am targeting is the organization levels part. So the factor related to target of change does have two. One is issues, the other is level at which I am actually targeting. So these are the factors that would impact my OD success of my OD intervention. Okay. So now we are going into the definition of what is, basically there is a section which talks about designing of OD interventions. Okay. So one of the elements that you need to understand in order to design a OD intervention, first you need to understand what is an effective intervention is. What is the definition of it, right? And then what are the steps to design the intervention, right? So, first thing is understanding what is an effective intervention. This is also something which is repetitive. Already we read this, if you remember. One, there are 3 major criteria as far as this effective intervention is concerned. One, the extent to which it fits the need of an organization, casual knowledge of intended outcomes, right? Extent to which it transfers change management competence to organization members, right? So these are the 3 broad criteria or major criteria to make to define an effective intervention. So this is also a repetition from unit 1. There is a lot of overlaps between unit 1 and unit 2. Okay, so this is another overlap that we have. And now we are going into steps of designing intervention. So so uh, so first thing, you need to actually diagnose the environment. Okay, so the reason being is, the intervention, even though you are actually targeting a particular unit or a particular thing, and yes, obviously one person is understanding that particular unit, that particular team, so it does have a wider impact as well. So even though basically the point to say here is the entire organization is linked. If you actually change this particular team in this way, how it is going to impact the entire organization, right? So you need to understand or diagnose the entire environment. That is the first step. 2, organization of report. Okay, so basically once your diagnosis is done, it is about you actually organizing particular report. And then preparation, so how to report is what is the organization of report is. The third one is actually doing the report, right? What are the target variables, determining the techniques that you are going to actually use. Okay, and then fourth is literature search. So here, what is literature search here? See, we talked about choosing what are the relevant interventions, what is the strategy, etc. Right? There is process models, there is a content model, etc., which is already there within the organization, outside the organization, which has do's and don'ts kind of a thing, right? So you need to search that particular literature and then see what is the best suited as far as this particular problem that you diagnosed. 5, development of action plan. This is where you are going to actually develop the action plan, whatever that you are suggesting as part of this particular intervention. Sixth one is analysis and evaluation of intervention choices. So, what are the other options that are there on the table, and why do you think that whatever the intervention is better when compared to the other choices? Okay, so these are the six broad steps while you are designing the intervention strategy. So, first thing is diagnosing the environment. That means you are understanding the problem space. Two, you are going to understand or rather put your structure for the entire report. Okay. Three, you're going to prepare the report. Four, you're going to search the literature in terms of what are the best techniques that are available, what paper says, what framework says, etc. Five, you're going to develop the action plan. Six, you're going to analyze all the choices that you have on the table, right? So these are the broad six steps. Okay, now we are going into objectives. What is the objective of these intervention strategy plan or whatever, right? So first objective is it actually calls for a meaningful framework that integrates intervention strategies. Okay, so I mean there seems to be some seven odd frameworks. I don't know, but we were introduced as far as the frameworks are concerned. We were introduced for three frameworks in a way. Okay, so what is the meaningful framework? Is what is the first thing that is going to be identified, right? As an objective one. Objective two, evaluating the effectiveness and efficiency of organizational intervention strategies. Okay, so what is the effectiveness and efficiency of these strategies? That is objective two. Objective three, implications of finding, research, and organization practice related to intervention activities. Okay, so basically implications are something that are examined in the end. So what exactly is the final outcomes, right? So basically that is objective three. So these are the three broad objectives that this entire designing of intervention strategy would fulfill. Okay, so that actually completes unit 2 as far as our block 4 is concerned.